Today I'm joined by John Plassard, the director at Louis Capital Markets, to discuss the wave of social unrest spreading across the global economy. Welcome to the show, John. It's great to have you at the Deeks Coffee TV studio. Now, fears are spreading of a worldwide economic slump, and social unrest, one of the biggest factors of it is something like a recession. Now, there's all this talk of the UK, a 50% chance of sliding back into recession. Before that, it was the US, and also a lot of people think that Japan never actually left a recession. But in your opinion, are we heading into a global recession, or is it just a limited period of hardship for a majority of economies?
Thank you for that question. I think actually, if you see in every country in the Eurozone, you see growth is cooling down. I think we are going more into a big recession. And I don't think it's just for a small period of time. And you know that actually debt in all the European countries, and also in the United States, of course, but in all the European countries is quite huge. For a recession, it means there is no growth. The question is growth going to come back next year? I will say no, of course. You see one thing quite interesting in most of the country in the Eurozone. They are putting more and more austerity measures. Now we're talking about Greece with Papandreou trying to put a referendum on the Greek bailout. And why did he do that? Because he knows that the more you put austerity measure, the more people will go in the street. I call it the elasticity of acceptance. At one point, government cannot put more austerity measure because people will go on the street. And that's the perfect example. Why did Papandreou try to put a referendum on the Greek bailout? It was because of the street noise. We talked just before how to restore growth. You know, the first thing to restore growth is to restore confidence. Of course. That's the problem. That's really the problem. That's not going to happen right now. Exactly. If you have high unemployment, a little bit of inflation, tax going higher, how do you want to restore confidence? It's not possible.
It's a vicious circle, really, isn't it?
Exactly, really.
It's also important to point out as well that this wave of widespread social unrest, it's affecting both rich and poor countries.
Exactly. It's very interesting to see that it's all started in Tunisia with the Arab Spring. And after it, as you said, it spread away with Tunisia, with Jordania, Libya, and all those kind of countries from the Middle East. Yeah. And after you had, as you said before, UK, the UK in London, and Greece. But that means really that governments are going too far away with their measures.
Obviously, the Eurozone debt crisis is, it's intensifying downside risk, not only in the Euro area, but on a global scale now too. And a lot of the global outlooks for GDP growth figures for the future from 2012 onwards, they're all being revised down. And I think as well, we can look at some of the GDP figures coming from some of the major economies. China at the top, we just mentioned 9.1%, but growth isn't their problem really, it's inflation.
Exactly.
At the same time, you've got the United States, 1.6%. Some people are predicting for 2012 1.8%, the UK 0.5%, and Japan minus 1%. But can we use the Eurozone debt crisis, is that the sole reason to blame for the suppressed growth, or do you think there's other contributing factors in it as well?
There are other contributing factors, and in fact, as you mentioned before, the countries of the Eurozone are not anymore depending on their self. They are depending also of growth of Asian market. But next year, you're going to have the growth of China, who is at 8%. Imagine in 2 years if the growth of China is at 6 or 5%. And in the Eurozone, growth is still at 1%. If we said that growth is at 1%, and we have a little bit of inflation, in fact, there's no growth. The more they're going to depend of the other countries, for example, China, the more there are risks that those predictions about next year and in 2 years are going to be put down again. So this is really the problem. They are not depending on themselves.
Let's look at employment now and use the Eurozone as a focus point. Some of the latest figures coming out of the Eurozone. Unemployment in the Eurozone climbed to a 15-year high, 10.2%. The interesting fact as well is that young people are actually being the hardest hit by the lack of jobs. We can see here youth unemployment in Italy, 29%, in Greece at 43%, and in Spain at 48%. Now that's a significant proportion of the population. Surely with the Eurozone debt crisis, let's be frank, it's worsening at the moment.
Exactly.
Surely this is just set to get worse, is it not?
It's going to be worse, of course, and even in Switzerland, for example, we can see now in Switzerland that there's going to be more and more unemployment, and I think in Switzerland you're going to have, for Switzerland, massive unemployment. That means, of course, 5 or 6%. But that's a long time ago. We have not tasted those unemployment rates.
So for the moment, you think that the social crises are going to intensify.
Exactly.
What kind of solutions should we be considering then?
For the moment, in fact, today there are no solutions. Because if you want to reduce the debt, you have to put more austerity measure. And the more you put austerity measure, the more you're going to have people in the street. So government has to bet that growth is going to come back and consumption is going to come back. But how do you want consumption to come back if, in fact, there are no more incentive for people or the middle class, or they are putting tax higher? For the moment, I cannot see the blue sky.
I don't think a lot of people can at the moment either,
Exactly.
if we're honest with ourselves. Thank you ever so much, John. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today, but it was great to get your opinion on the matter.
Thank you very much.